I'm Lauren Whitaker, 38, the daughter who spent 18 months saving every spare dollar to give my parents and brother a $26,000 first-class trip to Dubai. 5 days after I revealed the surprise, my father called, not to thank me, but to tell me I was no longer invited. My seat now belonged to my brother's fiancée because, in his words, gifts belong to the recipient. If you've ever been erased from something you built, replaced in your own story by the people you trusted most, stay. This is how I stopped begging for a seat at the table and took back the table. I'm Lauren Whitaker, 38, and I've been earning my own way since I was old enough to clock in at a job. My title now, Senior Finance Manager at a firm in Chicago, looks shiny on paper, but it was built from ramen dinners, student loans I signed for alone, and years of working while my friends went out. I learned young that in our house, my father's approval was reserved for my older brother, Tyler. Dad, Robert Bob Whitaker, was a retired military officer who ran our family like a barracks. For him, Tyler could stumble and still be called resilient. But I could ace 9 out of 10 tests and be asked why I missed the last one. Mom, Elaine, was the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over conflicts instead of challenging Dad's word. It meant she rarely spoke up when the rules bent in Tyler's favour. I still remember being 12, sitting at the kitchen table with a birthday cake in front of me, only to watch it get moved to the counter so we could all rush to Tyler's baseball game. The frosting hardened in the fridge before I ever got a slice. Those moments, small to others, stacked up in my memory like bricks, each one a reminder that my place in the family was conditional. By the time I was in my 20s, I'd stopped asking for help entirely. Tyler dropped out of college twice, and Dad framed it as him finding himself. I worked 3 part-time jobs to keep my grades up and my rent paid, but that didn't make headlines in our house. Somewhere along the way, I stopped hoping for their praise and started focusing on building the kind of life where I didn't need it. That's why when the idea for the Dubai trip came to me, it wasn't about earning their approval. It was about giving them something extraordinary. My parents had never travelled outside the United States. Dad said international trips were too expensive, too complicated. Mum sometimes hinted about places she'd like to see, but it was always in that wistful tone of someone who doesn't believe it will ever happen. Their 40th wedding anniversary was coming up, and I wanted to change that. I pictured Mum standing in front of the Burj Khalifa, eyes wide. I imagined Dad, who'd spent part of his military career in the Middle East, but never as a tourist, trying traditional foods without a rushed timetable. I saw Tyler there too, because despite our differences, I knew my parents would want him in the pictures, part of the celebration. Once the idea landed, I went all in. I set up a separate savings account and started funneling every spare cent into it. I picked up extra projects at work, the kind with performance bonuses attached. I brewed coffee at home instead of stopping at Starbucks, packed lunches instead of eating out, and postponed the kitchen renovation I'd been planning. 18 months of discipline and sacrifice bought me something priceless: the ability to give my family an experience that money alone couldn't measure. I researched obsessively during lunch breaks and late nights. I booked first-class Emirates flights so they could stretch out and actually enjoy the journey. I reserved suites at the Burj Al Arab, where every guest is treated like royalty. I arranged a private desert dinner under the stars, complete with traditional entertainment. A yacht cruise around the Palm Jumeirah. VIP access to the Burj Khalifa observation deck, no lines, no waiting, even a guided tour of the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi. I wanted every moment to feel like stepping into a dream. Every payment I made, every confirmation email I saved, felt like building something tangible and beautiful. Not just a trip, but a statement. I see you. I appreciate you. I want to give you a memory you'll never forget. I even made sure Tyler's boss would approve his time off, calling ahead so he couldn't claim work as an excuse. By the time the final itinerary was in place, I could recite it by heart. 4 travellers, Mum, Dad, Tyler, me. 6 days in Dubai, 2 in Abu Dhabi. Luxury from the moment we stepped on the plane to the moment we landed back home. I knew it wouldn't erase the years of imbalance, but maybe, just maybe, it would be a chapter where we were all on the same page. The night I revealed the surprise, I hosted Sunday dinner at my place. I'd spent the afternoon setting the table with candles and linen napkins, the kind of little touches Mum always appreciated. For dessert plates, I placed a gold-embossed envelope at each setting, sealed with a wax stamp. I wanted them to open the news like an invitation to something magical, because that's exactly what it was. When we'd finished the main course, I told them, "Before dessert, there's something I want you to open." Mum looked puzzled, but curious. She picked up her envelope first, slipping her finger under the seal. Her eyes scanned the printed itinerary, the airline logo, the dates. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Lauren, is this real? Da? Siskawi Ori, for choice trembling." I nodded. "Happy 40th anniversary, Mum and Dad." Mum stood up and hugged me tight, whispering, "This is the most wonderful gift anyone's ever given us." Dad took longer with his, studying it like a contract. "This must have cost a fortune," he said finally. I shrugged, keeping my tone light. "Don't worry about it. It's my gift to you both." Tyler's reaction was pure excitement. He grinned as he read, "First class? The Burj Al Arab? Are you serious?" "Completely," I said. "We leave in 6 months. I've already cleared your time off with work, so no excuses." The moment felt good, better than I'd expected. Dad wasn't gushing, but there was a flicker of pride in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. I let myself enjoy it. That's when the doorbell rang. Mum went to answer, and moments later she returned with Sloane. She was all smiles, carrying a bakery box. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said sweetly. "Tyler mentioned your mum made her famous apple pie, and I couldn't resist stopping by." Tyler looked surprised, but not too surprised, which told me this wasn't as spontaneous as she was making it sound. She slid into the seat next to Tyler just as he was about to hand me back his invitation. Her gaze fell to the gold envelope in his hand. "What's this?" she asked. Tyler launched into the details before I could decide how much to share. "Lauren's taking us to Dubai for Mum and Dad's anniversary. First class, luxury hotel, everything." Sloane's eyes widened and she leaned in, hanging on every word. "Dubai, that's incredible. I've always wanted to go there. The shopping, the architecture, the desert." She asked question after question, how long we'd be gone, what tours were planned, whether there'd be time for personal shopping. I answered politely, but I noticed something in her expression. Calculation, like she was tallying up the value of each part of the trip. At one point she glanced at Dad, and he gave the faintest smile back. It was quick, almost nothing, but my stomach tightened. Tyler caught it too. His expression flickered for a second before he looked away. It was such a small thing, easy to dismiss, but I couldn't shake it. I'd seen that kind of unspoken exchange before. usually right before a family decision was made that somehow left me on the outside. We finished dessert with Sloane chattering about how Instagrammable everything in Dubai would be, while Mom tried to steer the conversation toward the anniversary itself. I stayed quiet, watching Tyler and Dad trade another subtle look when she mentioned how she'd kill for a trip like that. When they finally left, Tyler and Sloane together, Dad and Mom trailing after to walk them out, I stayed behind to clear the dishes. The house felt suddenly smaller, the warmth from earlier replaced with a draft I couldn't locate. I replayed those glances between Dad and Tyler in my head, and the way Sloane's smile had never quite reached her eyes. As I rinsed the plates, the thought settled in my chest like a stone. Something had shifted tonight, and whatever it was, it didn't feel like it was shifting in my favour. The engagement party was held at a cosy Italian restaurant Tyler and Sloane liked. A place with dim lighting, white tablecloths, and just enough pretension to make it feel like a special occasion. I brought a bottle of champagne as a gift, something celebratory but not extravagant. My budget for generosity had its limits these days. Sloane was already holding court when I arrived, showing off her ring to anyone within reach. The diamond caught the light in a way that made the entire room turn toward her hand. It was at least 2 carats, maybe more, and set in a platinum band. Gorgeous, yes, but completely out of Tyler's financial league. As I hugged him hello, I couldn't help glancing at Dad, who was leaning back in his chair with a satisfied smile. It didn't take much imagination to piece it together. Tyler had been scraping by at his sales job for years. That ring had Dad's fingerprints all over it, if not literally, then financially. The thought made me press my lips together to keep from saying something I'd regret. We ordered dinner, and for a while the conversation stayed light. Stories about how they met, wedding venue ideas, a few playful jabs from Mom, about Tyler needing to learn how to dance before the big day. Then Sloane leaned forward, eyes bright. "So," she said, "I've been thinking about what to pack for Dubai." The word hung in the air like a dropped glass. "We," she corrected herself almost instantly, "should definitely coordinate outfits, especially for the Burj Al Arab. I have this red dress with gold accents that would be perfect." I set my fork down. "Sloane, I'm not sure if Tyler explained, but the trip is booked for 4 people. Mom, Dad, Tyler, and me. Everything's already reserved." There was a beat of silence. Sloane's smile didn't falter, but it tightened at the edges. Dad cleared his throat. "Lauren, now that Sloane is going to be part of the family, don't you think it would make sense to include her in a trip like this? Family should be together for important occasions." Mom glanced at me, then back at her plate. She opened her mouth as if to speak. But when Dad shot her a look, she closed it again. The muscles in my jaw tightened. "I understand the sentiment," I said evenly, "but the reservations are set. Flights, hotel suites, private tours, all for 4. Adding a 5th this late would be complicated and expensive." Dad waved his hand as if brushing away a minor inconvenience. "You're doing well in your career, Lauren. I'm sure the extra cost wouldn't be a burden." My pulse picked up. It's not just about cost. It's about the planning. Everything's tailored for a specific number of guests. Sloane tilted her head, the picture of polite innocence. "Oh, of course, I would never want to impose. I just thought, well, Tyler has told me so much about this trip. It sounds like such a special family time. I'd love to be included, but I understand if it's not possible." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes flicked toward Dad as if passing a silent baton. He caught it instantly. "Family should be together," he repeated, slower this time, like he was issuing an order rather than making a suggestion. The tension at the table grew heavy enough to taste. Tyler shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Maybe we could figure something out," he offered, but it wasn't really a question. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Or maybe after the wedding, you two can plan your own trip to Dubai. I'd be happy to share my research and recommendations." It was the most diplomatic escape hatch I could offer, and it did the job, barely. The conversation moved on, but a thin layer of frost had settled over the table. I focused on my pasta, but the voices around me felt distant, muffled by the awareness that a line had been drawn tonight, and I had no doubt it would be crossed sooner rather than later. Dad called 2 nights later. His voice was clipped, businesslike. "We need to talk about the trip. Come by the house tomorrow at 6. He didn't ask, he told me. When I arrived, the living room lights were already on. Dad sat in his armchair, Tyler on the couch beside Sloane. The arrangement felt deliberate, like they'd claimed the high ground before I even walked in. The only open seat was across from them, perfectly positioned for interrogation. "Lauren, sit," Dad said, gesturing to the chair. His tone carried the same authority I remembered from childhood, the kind that ended conversations before they began. I sat, spine straight. "What's going on?" Dad folded his hands. "We've been thinking about the Dubai trip and we've come to a decision." He didn't say we'd like to discuss. He said decision. My stomach tightened. "I know adding Sloane would mean changes to the reservations," I began, trying to control the narrative. "But if that's what you really want, I can—" "That's not what we want," Dad interrupted. "Given the limitations of your bookings, the most sensible solution is for Sloane to take your place." The words hit like a physical blow. "Excuse me?" "You've travelled internationally before," he said, as if reciting from a prepared script. "Sloane never has. This would be a new experience for her, whereas, for you, it's just another trip." I blinked at him, the air feeling heavier by the second. "Dad, I planned this trip. I paid for it. It was my gift to you and Mom for your anniversary." "And we appreciate that," he replied quickly, his voice dipping into faux gratitude. "But gifts belong to the recipient. Your mother and I would like to share this experience with our son and his future wife." Tyler leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Lauren, don't be selfish about this. Sloane and I can't afford a trip like this. You've got a great job. You can go to Dubai anytime you want." Selfish. The word stung, absurd in its irony. Selfish. I spent 18 months saving for this. I gave up my own plans to make this happen for you all. Tyler shrugged. The kind of casual dismissal that made me want to scream. Sometimes you've got to think about the bigger picture. Family comes first. Sloane chose that moment to speak, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "I would never want to take something from you, Lauren. It would mean so much to be part of such a special family trip. But if you'd rather I not come, I understand." Her eyes shone with carefully curated sincerity, but the corners of her mouth betrayed a flicker of satisfaction. It clicked. Then, Sloane wasn't the mastermind here. She didn't have to be. The decision had already been made by the 2 people who should have defended me, my father and my brother. She was just the convenient reason they could point to, the excuse that wrapped betrayal in the language of family. I looked at Dad, then at Tyler, searching for some crack in their expressions, some hint of hesitation. There was none. Mum wasn't in the room, and I wondered if that was by design. If she knew this conversation was happening, or if she'd chosen to be elsewhere to avoid witnessing it. The finality in Dad's tone left no room for argument. It's settled. Natalie, he caught himself, corrected. Sloane will be going in your place. We can work out the financial details later if you're unhappy with the arrangement. I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood. You've made it perfectly clear how much my place in this family matters. Enjoy the trip. As I walked to the door, Sloane called after me, "Please don't be angry. I'd hate for this to come between us." I turned back just long enough to say, "It already has." Then I left, the chill of the night air hitting harder than the winter wind. That night, I couldn't sleep. The conversation replayed in my head on a loop, Dad's voice declaring it sensible to replace me, Tyler calling me selfish. Sloane's faux humble smile. I stared at the ceiling until the shadows blurred, then grabbed my phone and scrolled through contacts until I landed on Maya. She answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Lauren, what's wrong?" I told her everything, every detail from the moment Dad summoned me to the living room to the way Sloane said she'd hate for this to come between us. I didn't even realize I was crying until my throat tightened and my words came out in fragments. Maya was quiet until I finished. Then she said, "You know this isn't about Sloane, right? This is about your dad and Tyler thinking they can take whatever they want from you because you've always let them." I bristled at the word let. I didn't let them. You didn't stop them, she cut in gently. "Lauren, you've been bailing them out for years. And now they've decided you don't even deserve to enjoy the thing you paid for. That's not just unfair, it's insulting." "I don't want to cancel the trip," I admitted. "It was supposed to be for Mum and Dad's anniversary. I don't want to ruin it for her." "Then don't cancel it," Maya said. "Just take back control. Everything's in your name, right? The flights, the hotel, the tours?" I paused, thinking it through. "Yeah, I booked it all. My credit card, my confirmations, my travel agent." "Then they can't do anything without you. You're not their victim here unless you choose to be. I'm not saying you should be vindictive, but maybe you stop funding their luxury getaway. Give them the trip they've earned, not the one they've taken from you." Her words hit me like a jolt. I sat up in bed, the beginnings of an idea forming. "You mean downgrade everything?" "I mean adjust everything," she corrected. "Enough so they still get to go, but without the perks you worked your butt off to pay for. Put that money towards something for yourself." The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. This wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming something that had been taken from me without consent. If they thought they could erase me from my own gift, maybe they should find out what that gift looked like without my generosity holding it up. I opened my email and scrolled to the folder labelled Dubai Trip. Every reservation was there. Emirates flight confirmations, Burj Al Arab suite bookings, private tour schedules. My name was the primary contact on all of it. Without me, they couldn't even change a seat assignment. A calm I hadn't felt in days began to settle over me. For the first time since that awful meeting, I had the upper hand. Not in a petty way, but in a way that restored my agency. "I'll call Carmen in the morning," I told Maya. "She's the travel agent who booked everything. I'll tell her we need to make some adjustments." "Good," Maya said, her tone sharpening into approval. "And when you're done, I want you to take whatever you save and plan something just for you. No compromises, no family strings attached. By the time I hung up, I was already imagining it. A trip with no hidden costs, no uninvited plus ones, no one to edge me out. The thought alone was like taking a deep, clean breath after weeks in stale air. Tomorrow the real planning would begin, and this time I'd be the only one on the guest list. The next morning, I brewed coffee strong enough to wake the dead and sat at my desk with my laptop open to Carmen's contact info. My fingers hovered over the phone for a moment. Once I made this call, there would be no turning back, not without tipping them off. But the image of Dad saying, "Gifts belong to the recipient," shoved away any hesitation. Carmen answered cheerfully, "Lauren, how's my favourite client? Excited for Dubai?" "Not exactly," I said, forcing a polite tone. "There's been a change in circumstances. I need to make adjustments to the trip." "Oh," her voice softened. "I hope everything's okay." "It will be," I said, but I'm no longer going. And because of that, we need to reconfigure everything for the remaining guests. I could almost hear her scanning the mental checklist of our meticulously arranged itinerary. "What changes are you thinking?" "First, the flights will downgrade from first-class Emirates to economy. Whatever seats are available together will do." There was a pause. "Lauren, that's quite a change. Are you sure?" "Positive." My voice was steady. "Next, cancel the Burj Al Arab suites and rebook 2 standard rooms at a 3-star property in Deira. City Seasons Hotel should work." Carmen hesitated. "That's on the opposite side of the city from most of your planned activities." "That's fine," I said. "We're also cancelling the private desert dinner, the yacht cruise, the VIP observation deck tickets at the Burj Khalifa, and the personal shopping experience at Dubai Mall." "Everything?" "Everything exclusive," I confirmed. "Replace them with a basic group tour package that covers major attractions and transportation. No private guides." She typed rapidly, the faint click of keys coming through the line. "All right. I can process those changes today. There will be significant refunds on the airfare, hotel, and experiences. Did you want that back to your card?" Here came the twist I'd been waiting for. "Actually, I'd like to reallocate the credit toward a new booking, just for me. The Maldives, 1 week, overwater bungalow, daily spa treatments, all-inclusive dining, and if there's budget left, private airport transfers." Carmen chuckled softly, catching on. "Trading sand dunes for turquoise lagoons?" "I like it. Let me run the numbers. With the downgrades and cancellations, you'll have enough for a 5-star Maldives resort plus some extras. You could even add a sunset dolphin cruise or a private snorkeling trip." I smiled for the first time in days. "Book it." As we finalised the details, I felt something loosen inside me, a knot I hadn't even realised I'd been carrying. This wasn't spite, it was self-preservation. I wasn't destroying the trip. They'd still go to Dubai, still see the sights. But the lavishness they'd tried to claim without me was gone. And in its place, I was building something purely my own. When Carmen emailed the revised Dubai itinerary, I reviewed it carefully. Economy class boarding passes, modest hotel rooms in a neighbourhood far from the city's glittering core, shared bus tours instead of chauffeured SUVs. It was still a vacation, just stripped of the extravagance that had been my gift. Then I opened the Maldives confirmation. 7 nights in a secluded overwater villa with direct lagoon access. Sunrise yoga on the deck. Afternoon massages overlooking the water. Dinner under the stars with my feet in the sand. It was the kind of trip I'd never let myself plan before because I was always spending on someone else. "Thank you, Carmen," I said as we wrapped up the call. "This actually feels better than what I started with." And it did. For the first time since Dad had blindsided me, I felt light, in control. The bruised ache in my chest hadn't disappeared, but it had stopped deepening. I'd stopped them from taking more, and I'd given myself something back in the process. The day of their departure arrived like a storm I'd been tracking on radar, inevitable, slow-moving, and impossible to ignore. I was at my desk in the office, trying to focus on a quarterly budget review, but my eyes kept flicking to the clock. I knew their flight time by heart. I'd planned it after all. At 10:14 a.m, my phone lit up with Dad on the screen. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Hello, Dad," I said evenly. His voice came through sharp enough to cut glass. "What the hell is going on? We're at the Emirates counter and they're telling us our tickets are for economy. Economy, Lauren. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," I replied, keeping my tone calm, almost casual. "I made some adjustments to the reservations after I decided I wouldn't be going." "You did what?" The volume in his voice rose enough that I could hear the echo of the terminal behind him. "We're standing here like fools." The check-in agent looked at me like I was trying to scam my way into first class. "I'm sorry you feel embarrassed," I said, though I wasn't sorry at all. "But as you told me, Dad, gifts belong to the recipient. You changed who was going on the trip. I changed what kind of trip it would be." There was a sharp inhale on the other end. For a moment, I thought he might hang up. Instead, he said, "This is completely unacceptable. We had an agreement." "Did we?" I asked. "I don't recall agreeing to be removed from the trip I planned and paid for. I don't recall agreeing to give my spot to someone else." In the background, I heard Mum's voice, muffled but urgent. "Bob, what's going on?" Then, closer to the receiver, "Lauren, honey, can we talk about this? This is our anniversary trip." I softened slightly at the sound of her voice. "I know, Mum, and you're still going. You'll still see Dubai, just not the way it was originally planned." She hesitated. "But this isn't up for negotiation," I cut in, gently but firmly. "I'm not going to undo it. The changes are final." Dad's voice surged back in, low and dangerous. "You fix this now, or there will be consequences for your relationship with this family." I took a slow breath, letting the silence stretch. "Those consequences already happened when you decided Tyler's fiancée was more deserving of my place than I was. Enjoy your flight." Before he could respond, I ended the call. My hands were steady as I set the phone down, but my heart was hammering. It wasn't fear. It was adrenaline, the kind that comes from finally saying the thing you've been swallowing for years. I stared at the spreadsheet on my monitor, the numbers swimming slightly. Somewhere over in Terminal 5, my family was dragging their carry-ons toward the economy security line, tickets in hand, realizing this trip wouldn't be the effortless parade of luxury they'd envisioned. For the first time since the whole mess began, I didn't feel like the one left out in the cold. They could keep their anniversary trip. I had my Maldives bungalow waiting. It didn't take long for the next wave to hit. Barely an hour after I hung up on Dad, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Tyler. What the hell, Lauren?" "Tyler. Economy? Seriously?" "Tyler. This is petty and beneath you." I stared at the messages for a moment before setting the phone face down on my desk. I wasn't going to get into a back and forth. Let him vent into the void. 5 minutes later, another buzz. "Tyler, You embarrassed mom and dad at the airport. You think that makes you look strong. It just makes you look bitter. I picked the phone up this time, typing slowly. Me. Enjoy your trip, Tyler. 3 dots appeared, blinked, disappeared. Then, Tyler, you've really changed. You know that. I almost laughed. Changed? No. This was the same me, just minus the part where I sacrificed myself to keep the peace. By lunchtime, the group had landed in their layover city, and Sloane's Instagram posts started popping up. First, a shot of her coffee cup in the terminal, tagged, "You are a travel day." Then the real gem, a photo of her and Tyler in their cramped economy seats, the angle awkward because the tray table was down. The caption read, "Expectation versus reality. Travel fails, not what I planned." I rolled my eyes. She was careful not to tag me, of course. No need to make it obvious to her followers who had ruined her big debut in Dubai. By the time they arrived in the UAE, the posts had taken on a tone halfway between performative optimism and passive-aggressive complaining. A picture of their modest hotel room captioned, "Not quite the palace I envisioned, but we'll make the best of it." A blurry night photo of the city skyline taken from miles away, still beautiful, even from a distance. I knew exactly what she was doing, crafting a narrative where she was the good sport in the face of unexpected changes. But anyone paying close attention could see the cracks. That night, after scrolling through her feed one last time, I decided to post something myself. Just one photo. It was taken earlier that day from my overwater bungalow in the Maldives. The turquoise water stretched out endlessly beyond my deck, the sun warm and golden. My feet were propped up on the railing, a paperback in my lap, a glass of chilled white wine on the side table. No long caption, just sometimes choosing yourself is the best itinerary. Self-care, Maldives. I didn't need to tag anyone. I knew they'd see it eventually, either directly or through someone in the family passing it along. The point wasn't to gloat. It was to remind myself, and maybe them, that I was no longer operating from a place of scarcity, begging for a seat at their table. Almost immediately, friends and co-workers began liking and commenting. Living the dream. Jealous? This looks amazing. Good for you. It wasn't the validation I craved, but it was a reminder that my life didn't have to orbit around the whims of my family. The contrast between my calm blue horizon and their increasingly frustrated updates from Dubai became almost comical over the next few days. On day 2, Sloane posted a story of the two of them in a line so long it snaked out of the Burj Khalifa lobby and onto the plaza. Her caption, 3 hours to get to the elevator. Someone didn't plan this very well. Day 3, a group tour photo where they were sandwiched between strangers, looking wilted in the desert heat. Not exactly the private experience I pictured, she wrote. Tyler texted me again after that one. Tyler, you could have at least kept the desert dinner. Mum was really looking forward to that. Me, Mum could have said something before you and Dad decided to replace me. No reply. Meanwhile, my days were a rotation of spa treatments, snorkeling excursions, and long naps under the sound of waves lapping against stilts. I kept my phone on silent most of the time, only checking it at night to clear the barrage of notifications. One evening, I received a message from an old college friend who followed both me and Sloane. Friend, your feed versus hers? Wild contrast. You're basically a case study in protecting your peace. I smiled. That was exactly it. The two trips had become mirror images, one chaotic, one serene, one born of entitlement, the other of intention. It wasn't about punishing them anymore. It was about finally putting my energy into something that fed me instead of drained me. And, judging by the steady drip of passive-aggressive posts from Sloane, the lesson, whether they liked it or not, was being delivered loud and clear. By the 4th day of their trip, updates from Dubai had slowed to a trickle. The glamorous, non-stop posting from Sloane had been replaced with occasional muted photos, none of them smiling. From what I could piece together, reality had fully set in. The first hint came in a group text meant for family updates, one I hadn't been removed from but had muted weeks ago. A single photo appeared, the hotel room. 2 double beds, mismatched furniture, a window that looked out over a busy road. No balcony, no ocean view. The caption from Mum was simple, it's cosy. Translation, too small, too cramped, not what she had envisioned. I didn't respond. Later that evening, while I was having dinner under the stars in the Maldives, my phone lit up with a voicemail notification from Mum. I hesitated before pressing play, but curiosity won. "Hi, sweetheart," her voice began, tentative. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me right now, but I need to say this. I was wrong to stay quiet when your father told you you'd been replaced. I thought keeping the peace was the right thing, but it wasn't. I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry." She paused, a muffled sound in the background, maybe the hum of traffic outside their hotel. "This place, it's nothing like what you described. The room is small, it's far from everything, and there's no special treatment. We're waiting in lines for hours for things I know you had planned privately. And I keep thinking about how different it would have been if you were here. Not just because of the arrangements, but because you should have been here. I'm sorry, Lauren, I really am." The message ended there, and for a long moment, I just sat in silence, the sound of waves around me. It wasn't vindication I felt, not exactly, more like a bittersweet ache. She'd admitted what I'd needed to hear for years, that silence can be its own betrayal. 2 days later, another text from Tyler came through, this one shorter than usual. Tyler, "Sloane won't stop complaining about the hotel, the tours, the food, everything." It was almost funny reading his words and imagining the woman who had been so eager to insert herself into this trip now nitpicking every detail. I typed back, "Sounds exhausting." Then I put the phone down and went back to my book. The next morning brought another update via their social media. Sloane posted a photo from outside the Dubai Mall, tagging it with retail therapy fail. The caption read, "When the store you want is a 20-minute cab ride from your central hotel." I could practically hear Tyler grinding his teeth from halfway across the world. In between these snippets, I kept replaying Mum's voicemail in my head. It didn't erase the hurt, but it cracked something open, a possibility that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see me clearly. For once, I wasn't chasing that recognition. It had come to me uninvited, wrapped in an admission I never thought I'd get. And as much as I wanted to hold on to my righteous anger, I couldn't ignore the truth. Part of me still wanted a better relationship with her, but it would have to be on different terms. Terms where my voice and my place were not optional. 2 nights after Mum's voicemail, my phone rang again, Dad's name flashing on the screen. For a moment I expected the same sharp, commanding tone I'd heard at the airport. But when I answered, his voice was different. "Lauren," he began, clearing his throat, "I think I owe you an apology." I didn't speak right away, letting him fill the silence. We I didn't realise the extent of what you had planned for this trip. Carmen sent us the original itinerary when we tried to rebook some of the experiences. He paused, as if weighing each word. I had no idea you'd arranged all those private tours, the first-class flights, the hotel suites. You put so much into it. And what we did, replacing you, it was wrong. I see that now. I kept my tone neutral. You told me gifts belong to the recipient. He sighed heavily. And I used that as an excuse to do something selfish. I'm sorry. It wasn't the grand confession I'd dreamed of hearing my whole life, but it was more than I'd expected. I appreciate you saying that, I said simply. It doesn't erase it, but I hear you. We hung up not long after, the conversation ending awkwardly but without anger. I sat there for a while, the sound of the ocean mixing with the churn of my thoughts. An hour later, a text from Tyler lit up my phone. Tyler, you were right about Sloane. No explanation, no build-up, just that one sentence. I stared at it for a long moment, unsure if I wanted to engage. Finally, I typed back, me. What happened? His reply came in pieces. Tyler, she lost it at Dubai Mall, wanted some designer bag that cost more than my rent. I told her no. She accused me of ruining her once-in-a-lifetime trip. Tyler, she said the only reason she came was for the shopping and the luxury experience she thought we'd have. Tyler, Dad had to step in before security did. I pictured the scene, shoppers glancing over, Sloane's voice carrying across the marble floors, Tyler's face reddening as his fiancée dismantled her own image of gracious charm. Me. And now, Tyler, I'm done. We're done. I can't be with someone who treats people like that. I should have listened to you. It was strange. Reading those words didn't bring the satisfaction I might have expected. If anything, I felt a dull ache, not for the relationship itself, but for the way Tyler had to learn the hard way what I'd seen from the start. Later that evening, lying in a hammock on my deck in the Maldives, I let my mind drift. The sunset painted the water in ribbons of gold and pink, the air heavy with salt and the scent of hibiscus. It should have been pure bliss, and in many ways it was, but under the calm was an uncomfortable truth I couldn't ignore. For years, I had been buying my place in this family. Not in the literal transactional sense, though the money I'd spent over time could fill a ledger, but in the emotional economy we'd built, I provided, they accepted. I overcompensated for the lack of verbal affirmation by funding experiences, repairs, gifts. And every time I gave more, I hoped it might finally tip the scale toward being seen, appreciated, chosen. This Dubai trip had been the ultimate version of that pattern. A grand gesture meant to prove something I shouldn't have had to prove in the first place. And when they took it from me, it felt like the ground gave way. Not just because of the betrayal, but because it forced me to see the foundation for what it was. Fragile, uneven, unsustainable. Now, sitting thousands of miles away, the turquoise lagoon lapping beneath me, I realised that taking back control of the trip wasn't just about teaching them a lesson, it was about teaching myself one, that my value in this family, or anywhere, couldn't be built on what I provided materially. That if love was conditional on what I gave, it wasn't love worth keeping. A soft breeze moved through, carrying the distant sound of waves breaking on the reef. I closed my eyes and let it settle over me. The drama unfolding in Dubai was no longer mine to manage. They could navigate their cramped hotel room, their long queues, their broken engagements. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the pull to fix it. A week after they returned from Dubai, Dad called again. His voice was calmer than I'd ever heard it, almost tentative. "Lauren, can we meet for coffee? Just you and me?" Part of me wanted to say no, to keep the distance that had felt so strangely liberating. But another part knew I needed this conversation. We agreed to meet at a cafe, halfway between our houses, neutral territory. When I walked in, he was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 mugs of coffee, steam curling in the sunlight. He stood when he saw me, a reflex from his military days, and gestured for me to sit. "Thanks for coming," he said, settling back into his chair. I nodded but didn't fill the silence. He'd asked for this meeting. The floor was his. After a long sip of coffee, he finally began. "I've been thinking a lot since we got back, about the trip, about a lot of things, actually." He glanced out the window before meeting my eyes again. "I realise I've been unfair to you for a very long time." I kept my expression neutral, waiting. "I always knew you could take care of yourself," he continued. "You were independent from the start, organised, disciplined, never needed pushing. Tyler, he needed more help, at least that's what I told myself, but somewhere along the way, that turned into me expecting more from you and giving you less in return. I stopped saying thank you. I stopped showing appreciation because I assumed you didn't need it." The admission landed heavier than I expected. I'd always known this dynamic existed, but hearing him acknowledge it out loud made the air between us shift. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Do you know how much it hurt when you said Sloane deserved to go more than I did?" That wasn't just about the trip. It was about every time I've been overlooked, every time Tyler's needs came before mine, every time I had to prove I belonged in this family. He winced, his fingers tightening around the coffee cup. "I shouldn't have said that. I was wrong. I thought I was doing the right thing by welcoming her in, by making her feel part of the family. But I didn't think about what it would cost you. I didn't think about how it would feel for you to be pushed aside for someone who'd only just walked into our lives." "It felt like I didn't matter," I said quietly. "Like everything I'd done to plan that trip, to give you something special, meant nothing." "I know," he said, his voice low. "And I hate that I made you feel that way. I can't take it back, but I can do better going forward if you'll let me." I studied him for a moment, searching for any sign that this was just another peacekeeping performance. But there was no defensive edge in his tone, no quick pivot to justify his actions. Just a man in his 60s, finally realising he'd built a hierarchy in his own family and put me at the bottom. "This isn't about one trip, Dad," I said. "It's about a lifetime of being told in 100 different ways that my needs are secondary. I can't just reset that because you say you'll do better. It's going to take more than words." He nodded slowly. "I understand. I'm asking for the chance to prove it. I can't promise I won't mess up, but I can promise I'll listen when you tell me I have." There was a part of me that wanted to hand him absolution right there, to accept the apology and move on. But another part knew that doing so would be falling into an old pattern, making it easy for him to feel forgiven without truly changing. "I'll think about it," I said finally. We sat in silence for a few moments, sipping coffee. Outside, the street was busy with people going about their lives. Families pushing strollers, friends laughing over brunch. For once, I didn't feel the urge to fill the quiet. It was enough to let it sit, to allow the discomfort to be part of the process. When we stood to leave, he surprised me by hugging me, tightly, without the stiff formality I was used to. "I'm sorry, Lauren," he said again, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "I know," I replied, and for the first time I almost believed him. 2 days after meeting Dad, I got an unexpected knock at my door. When I opened it, Tyler stood there, hands in his pockets, looking more worn down than I'd ever seen him. "Got a minute?" he asked. We sat at my kitchen table, mugs of coffee between us. He didn't waste time. "I ended things with Sloane, the Dubai trip. It was a disaster. She showed me exactly who she is, and I didn't like it." I nodded but said nothing, letting him keep talking. "I also realised something," he continued, eyes fixed on the coffee in front of him. "I've been taking advantage of you for years. Rent money, bailing me out of bad decisions, covering for me with Mom and Dad. I just assumed you'd always be there. And when you weren't, when you stood up for yourself, it made me angry because it meant I couldn't lean on you anymore." His honesty surprised me. I'd prepared for excuses or deflections, but instead I got admission. "You didn't just lean on me," I said quietly. "You let Dad make me the safety net so he didn't have to hold you accountable." Tyler winced. "I know, and I'm sorry. I don't want to be that guy anymore." I studied him for a moment. An apology is a start, but it's not enough unless you change the pattern. "I will," he said. "In fact, I was thinking maybe we should set some rules as a family so this kind of thing doesn't happen again." That afternoon, the three of us, me, Dad, and Tyler, sat down in my parents' living room. Mum joined halfway through, hovering at first, but eventually sitting beside me. We laid it all out. No one assumes my money is family money. If I choose to help, it's a gift or a loan with clear terms, not an unspoken obligation. No decisions about my contributions get made without me in the room. And if someone tries to pressure me, I reserve the right to walk away entirely. It was awkward, sure, but it was also the first time I'd seen real consensus on this issue. Dad agreed without his usual resistance. Tyler promised not to put me in that position again. Mum, to my surprise, said she would speak up if anyone tried to cross the line. That night, after I got home, I sent a group text to all three of them. Me, "I'm glad we talked today. These boundaries aren't up for debate. If they're respected, we'll be fine. If they're not, I'll remove myself from the situation. No second chances." One by one, the replies came in. Mum, understood. Dad, got it. Tyler, fair. I stared at the thread for a long moment, feeling the weight of what we'd just done. For years, the idea of drawing such a hard line would have terrified me, afraid it would push them away, afraid it would confirm I didn't belong. But now, it felt like the opposite. It felt like I was finally making space for a healthier version of us, even if it meant losing the old one. The chapter that began with me planning the perfect gift had ended in a way I could never have predicted. But it was ending on my terms. 6 months later, the Dubai trip felt like a different lifetime. I'd been going to therapy every other week, working with a counsellor who specialised in family dynamics and boundaries. In those sessions, I learned something deceptively simple. No is a complete sentence. It doesn't require justification, explanation, or an apology. At first, saying it felt unnatural, like I was walking into a room without armour. I'd been conditioned for so long to cushion every refusal with a reason, to soften the blow so no one would feel slighted. But my therapist kept reminding me, "You're not responsible for managing other people's disappointment." It was a lesson that paid off almost immediately. When Dad called one Saturday, asking if I could help cover part of Tyler's car repairs, I didn't hesitate. "No, Dad, I can't do that." There was a pause, the kind that used to make me rush to fill it, but then he said, "All right, I understand. No fight, no guilt trip, just acceptance." Of course, it wasn't perfect. A few weeks later, he slipped back into old habits, making a comment about how family supports each other when I didn't volunteer to chip in for a big home project. This time, instead of letting it slide, I called him out, calmly but firmly. Support goes both ways, Dad, and respecting my boundaries is part of that. To his credit, he sighed, nodded, and said, "You're right. I'm sorry." It wasn't lost on me how far that was from the man who once told me Sloane deserved my place on the trip more than I did. Mum had changed too. She was no longer the silent peacekeeper, at least not with me. When family conversations veered toward the kind of assumptions that used to box me in, she spoke up. Once, at a Sunday dinner, Dad made an offhand remark about how Tyler just needed a little help to get through a tough month. Before I could respond, Mum said, "We all need help sometimes, but it shouldn't always come from the same person." She glanced at me as she said it, and I felt something I hadn't in years backed up. Tyler was a different story. He hadn't transformed overnight, but the end of his engagement had forced him to take a hard look at himself. He'd gotten a steadier job, cut down on the impulsive spending, and, most importantly, stopped coming to me for bailouts. One evening, over coffee, he admitted, "I didn't realize how much I leaned on you until you stepped back. At first, I thought you were just being cold. Now I get it. You were protecting yourself." I appreciated the honesty, even if it was long overdue. I was protecting our relationship too, I told him, because if I kept giving without limits, I was going to resent you, and I don't want that. He nodded, and for the first time in a long while, I believed he understood. In therapy, I learned to separate the family I was born into from the family I chose. That didn't mean cutting my parents or brother out of my life. It meant adjusting my expectations. I stopped looking to them for validation they were either unwilling or unable to give. I built up friendships that felt mutual, spent more time with people who valued me without conditions. The Maldives trip had been the catalyst, but the real work was in the quiet, daily choices. Choosing to skip a gathering if it meant sacrificing my peace. Choosing to spend my money and time in ways that felt right to me, without factoring in how it might be perceived. Choosing myself over and over, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. By the 1-year mark, I could feel the shift in every interaction. My family didn't tiptoe around me, but they didn't push past my boundaries either. Dad still had his moments, he probably always would, but they were fewer, and he caught himself faster. Mum's voice carried more weight in family discussions. Tyler was learning how to stand on his own 2 feet. The wounds from Dubai hadn't vanished, but they had healed into something sturdier. A reminder that I could survive being cast out of my own gift and come back stronger. That the people who were willing to learn from their mistakes could stay in my life, and the rest could fall away without me chasing them. It wasn't the fairy tale reconciliation I might have imagined years ago. It was messier, more fragile, and far more real. For their 41st wedding anniversary, Mum surprised everyone by suggesting something simple. A long weekend at a lakeside cabin 2 hours from home. No flights, no itineraries, no luxury bookings, just the 4 of us in one place, away from distractions. We rented a small A-frame cabin with big windows that looked out over the water. The deck wrapped around the house, and a wood-burning stove kept the chill off at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt intentional. On the first evening, we cooked together in the tiny kitchen. Dad manning the grill outside, Mum chopping vegetables at the counter, Tyler stirring a pot of chili on the stove while I baked cornbread. There was no rush, no background noise of competing schedules, just the sound of utensils on cutting boards and the occasional burst of laughter when someone dropped something After dinner, we sat around the fire pit, the lake dark and still beyond us. The conversation drifted from funny childhood memories to travel stories and, eventually, back to Dubai. This time, no one was defensive. Dad admitted, "I think that trip was the wake-up call we all needed." Tyler nodded. "I didn't like the lesson, but I'm glad I learned it." I smiled faintly. "I'm glad I taught it." We laughed, but there was no bite to it. The sharp edges of the past year had been sanded down by time and effort. The next day, we took the cabin's rowboat out onto the lake. Tyler and I paddled while Dad cast a line, more for the peace of it than the fishing. Mum sat at the bow, her hat pulled low against the sun, and for a moment I could almost forget the years of imbalance that had preceded this calm. Back at the cabin, we made sandwiches and ate them on the deck, the water rippling in the afternoon breeze. Mum asked me about my latest work project. Dad told me about a new walking route he'd started taking every morning. Tyler shared a story about a client at his job who'd reminded him of me, determined, prepared, unwilling to be pushed around. That night, we played board games until the lanterns burned low. When Tyler lost spectacularly at Scrabble, he didn't pout. He laughed and demanded a rematch. Dad, uncharacteristically, let me win at chess without pretending it was an accident. It struck me how different this anniversary felt from the one before. Last year, I'd been trying to buy my way into closeness, pouring time and money into an experience I thought would finally put me in the centre of my own family's story. This year, I was simply in it. No performance, no grand gestures, just showing up as myself. On the final morning, we stood on the deck, drinking coffee, watching the mist rise off the lake. Dad turned to me and said, "Thanks for coming this weekend. It meant a lot. It was such a small thing, but the sincerity in his voice made it land heavier than some of his more elaborate apologies." As we packed up the car, Mum hugged me and whispered, "I'm proud of you." It wasn't about anything I'd done for them, it was about who I'd become. Driving home, I thought about how love had always been described to me. Quiet sacrifice, putting others first, keeping the peace at all costs. But the past year had taught me something different. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's erosion. Real love, the kind worth giving and receiving, has edges. It knows when to say no, when to walk away, and when to come back. To anyone watching my story, I'd want them to know this. You don't have to bankrupt yourself, emotionally or otherwise, to earn a place in your family. And if you have to fight for that place, maybe it's time to build one of your own. As the cabin disappeared in the rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Warmth that wasn't tinged with exhaustion, hope that wasn't laced with doubt. It was the kind of ending that wasn't really an ending at all, just a new chapter, one I was writing with my own pen.